Welcome to Showdown. I'm Mark Cason, and I am on campus tonight. And I've done it from here a few times. I'm in a little different setting this afternoon, but no problem with that. I will say that there are some amazing developments in the world today. Let me tell you the thing that has really caught my eye, which is pretty interesting and possibly very problematic. But we'll see on this. But I've talked a lot about that idiotic company that Donald created, which does nothing and loses money and has no revenue and is a complete mess. But it did go public. And when you go public, whatever anybody's willing to pay is what the company is worth. And of course, it started off at $80 a share and then worked its all the way down to $12. And frankly, it was on its way to zero. But something did happen in the last few days. And this is what's so interesting. Well, in the first place, it's bounced in the last several days from $12 a share to $21 a share. So that's a pretty big move. It's frankly not a dead cat bounce, which I've talked about. This is different. And I'll tell you why it's happening. Elon Musk, who has become Donald Trump's best friend, and I don't know the reason. I don't know that we'll ever know the reason. Maybe they're just both insane. A lot of people think that Musk is insane. We know that Donald is. But here's what's going on. There is a rumor afloat that Elon Musk is going to buy all the shares of that idiotic SPAC. I just can't say the name because, there's a word in there that I just can't say when I'm speaking of Donald. I mean, TRUTH. Can't say it. The man has never told the truth, and it's just ridiculous. But at any rate, it is possible that Musk is going to buy all the shares. I don't know what he's going to pay. If he pays $50 a share, which he could, he can offer anything he wants. If he pays $50 a share, then Donald walks away with $6 billion. And here's the interesting part of this. If Elon Musk wanted to give Donald $6 billion, it might be a problem. It would certainly have tax consequences. However, if he buys all the shares of, I'm not even going to say it. If he buys all the shares of this thing and he pays 50, well, Donald can just take his profit. He'll pay taxes for sure, but it's different. It's different. It's a way that Musk could give the money to Trump, or even donate it. It could be, he may be thinking of donating money to the campaign. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, how could I be? What these people have on their minds. But if this is really happening, and it's rumored, if it's happening, it would be a way to get money funneled to Donald directly, to him personally, without saying, I'm giving Donald money. So who knows what they're up to? Now, it's also a question. Does Elon Musk want to take his money, his personal money, and turn it over to Trump? Maybe he does. But it would be a way to certainly give Donald money. Give it to him. I suppose he might even merge this thing into Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it now. And maybe that's what's on his mind. I can tell you this, Donald would kill for this deal because Donald Trump is broke. And all he's got is this idiotic SPAC, Special Purpose Acquisition Company. That's what he's got. That's his net worth. So if Elon Musk wants to hand him $6 billion, that's just the end of the conversation. We know one thing for sure. If Elon Musk doesn't know it, we all know, the rest of the world knows, if you give Donald $6 billion, he'll turn it into zero if you give him a little time. That's all. Just give him some time and space, and he'll turn it into zero. But, Musk has got lots of billions, more than 6, more than 10. If he wants to give all his money to Donald Trump, who can stop him? I mean, no one can. I mean, it's his money to do what he wants with, and if he uses it to buy this company, yeah, sure. But if he uses it to buy this company, then, well, that's the result. Donald's got the money. Musk probably wouldn't miss it because he's got so many billions anyway in his Tesla company. So I guess the answer there is, from the standpoint of the marketplace, these people they don't care. They just don't care. It doesn't mean anything. It's play money for Musk. It's desperation for Donald. But it certainly would give him some room to play games on his way to jail. Of course, it would also give him some money to buy some attorneys he normally doesn't pay. Maybe he would pay in this case. I don't know. Or maybe not, because he doesn't pay. I guess it really doesn't matter. It's not our business. It's certainly not my business. He could do what he wants. It's his business. It's his company. It's Elon Musk's money. And then again, it may turn out that none of this is true. It may turn out that there is no purchase of the Trump SPAC. That might just be a rumor. It might not be true at all. In which case, that thing will head back to zero anyway. But for right now, he's pumped up the price. And here's another possibility. With the price pumped up to $20 a share, I mean, that's $3 billion almost for Donald. And I can tell you that they could just say, forget the whole thing. Donald could walk in and sell at 20 if he could get it. Who knows? If he starts selling at 20, he might end up with 10. That's an unknown as well. Or during this rumor phase, there could be enough demand for the company that Donald could sell and get $20 a share. Yeah, anyway, all of these things are unknown. So we'll leave it at that right now. But it's certainly nothing good. Nothing good. But look, Donald gets money. It's not going to stop any of the rest of this. It won't help him win the presidency, which he won't. As I always say, and I'm going to keep saying it for the next 28 days, is that we're going to deposit Donald on the ash heap of history. Sometimes I say the trash heap of history. but more correctly, the ash heap of history, certainly where Joe McCarthy currently resides, and that's good enough. That's where he belongs. Okay, so let's move on with some other things that are happening today, which caught my eye. This is so sad. I'm going to get to 60 minutes in a minute, so just hang loose on that one. But I want to mention what's happening in Florida, but not necessarily for the reason that you would think. We know in Florida that there is a giant Hurricane Milton that is about to crush down on the entire state, and specifically Tampa. It doesn't look good. And in fact, there had been some talk about the fact that this thing was losing momentum as it moved on toward Tampa. But in the last few hours, that's changed. And the momentum has picked up tremendously. And it looks like it's going to crash down on the state as a Category 5, which is extremely powerful, deadly, so very deadly. As they're saying, no one can survive it. If you're there, you're gone. So they're saying, don't be there. Get out. Of course, a lot of people are thinking about how they could protect their property, but the answer is they really can't protect their property. That's a problem. This is too powerful. It's too dangerous. It's not just the wind, it's the water. The water is extraordinarily powerful when pulled together in the wind. I'm no meteorologist, but I can tell you right now that the result is going to be horrific. So that's the problem. But here is the political side of this, which has truly gone nuts and is really just another example of how messed up this country is between the two sides. And of course, I'm talking about Ron DeSantis, who this afternoon was supposed to receive a phone call from Kamala. Kamala called, and Ron DeSantis refused to take the phone call. And he said that essentially it was none of her business, and that specifically she has no role in any of this, and that she should butt out. So he would not take Kamala's phone call. And of course, Kamala's responding very appropriately due to the fact that this guy, well, he's just ignoring the fact that Kamala is part of our current administration in Washington, D.C. And if Joe Biden says that she has a role to play in helping to bail out Florida, well, that's the end of that conversation. Although, according to Ron DeSantis, he's saying, no, it's not the end, and that he is not going to talk to Kamala. Pretty childish, especially when you consider that the lives of millions of people are in the balance here. And to say that you won't talk to the Vice President of the United States if she's been given a role in dealing with, the FEMA response to what's happening in Florida, I just don't know what to say about the governor, except for the fact that he's playing with dynamite for himself politically, because if this goes the wrong way for him, by the time this thing is over, Kamala could be president of the United States, and Ron DeSantis could look pretty darn foolish, and worse, could even rise to criminality if people are dying over his refusal to get assistance from the federal government. I just don't understand the sense of this. This isn't what's being done in other states. Other states are working with the federal government, taking the assistance. And I mean, just people are working together to save the lives of people who are put in jeopardy by these extraordinarily dangerous storms. So for Ron DeSantis coach with Kamala, I have to say, it doesn't make a bit of sense. But then again, when you look at MAGA, when you look at Donald, when you look at what's gone on for the last 8 years since 2016, there's none of this that makes much sense at all. And the only thing that we're just so fortunate is that Joe Biden stepped into the breach in 2020, having won the election legitimately, and that gave him, that gave the government an opportunity to, as I always say, put Humpty Dumpty back together again, because Donald certainly pushed Humpty off the wall and had a great fall, which came very close to destroying Ukraine, wiping out NATO, having just dramatic impact on our foreign policy partners throughout Europe. It was pretty bad. But here we are. We're much better, because for 4 years, Donald and Kamala have worked together to revive NATO, strengthen the alliance with the addition of Sweden and Finland, and essentially, again, the United States government has stood up to the Russians and let them know that there's no way that we're going to cave in and start turning over property in Europe, which is under the direct protection of NATO. Now, I understand Ukraine is not, but Poland is. And there's really hardly a debate over this. There isn't any. The purpose of going after Ukraine is to set the stage for attaching Poland to Russia and really to revive the Soviet Union. I mean, and that's what Vladimir Putin said. He said that the greatest catastrophe in the 20th century was the destruction of the Soviet Union, and he has been aiming to put it back together again. So Ukraine, then Poland right behind it, then of course all the Baltic countries. It all sounds very easy to run the table if you're the Russians. But of course, we know what the result has been so far. The Russians have gone nowhere. They thought they were going to be in Kyiv. They're not. They thought that they would have an easy mark in going after Ukraine. Turned out not to be true. They thought they had relationships around the world that would strengthen the hand of their dictatorship, and instead they've lost, give or take, including the wounded, 1 million people in Russia. And there's a price to be paid for it politically, even in a country that's run by a dictator, because people can respond. They can be angry. They can be more than disappointed. This is not disappointment. This is catastrophic for the population of Russia. And then on top of that, remember, Russia's nothing. As John McCain always said, Russia is a gas station with an army. And yes, they have an army. not very powerful now that we've watched what happened to it in Ukraine, but they also have nuclear weapons. They've got 6,000 of those, and those are powerful tools that can be used in a lot of ways. Even when you don't attack anybody, those tools can be used to manipulate people through fear. Now, as it turns out, Joe Biden's not scared. Should he be? I don't think so. I think it's pretty clear. We've talked about this a lot, and that is that the Russian military complex can't be dumb enough to think that they could utilize nuclear weapons in some way that would salvage their foreign policy expertise. It's just not there. They are incompetent. They've always been incompetent. George Kennan talked about their incompetence all the way back in 1947 when he wrote in Foreign Policy. And really, we've seen the results. The Soviet Union completely imploded. And here we are dealing with the remnants of the Soviets, trying to figure out, what we have to do in order to stabilize the world, to help people to be able to operate in a safe environment, to help people to live without fear every day, which of course they are in Ukraine right now, but throughout most of the rest of the world, that fear level's pretty low. I would suspect that the people of Poland are not fearful. Certainly the government of Poland, I don't think they're fearful because they know that as long as the Democrats are in control in Washington, D.C., they're safe. Now, it is true that in 28 days, there is the potential for all of that to change. But potential isn't the same as reality. And I'm going to say that with the direction of the polls continuing through today, I think Donald is truly, done. Stick a fork in him, that thing. And here's why I say that. The New York Times Siena poll came out today. And the New York Times Siena poll has been the absolute worst polling for Kamala Harris. Consistently, the New York Times Siena poll has shown all the way up until last month that Donald Trump was actually ahead, only by a point, because after Joe Biden left, the trend started flipping the other way slowly. However, with all the leaning in that poll towards Donald Trump, the latest poll that came out today put Kamala Harris ahead by 3 points. And for the New York Times Siena poll to show Kamala Harris ahead by 3 points, I think that is 100% in line with what we've seen in some of the other polls, like Morning Consult, where Kamala's ahead by 7. Now, if we go through the battleground states, again, Kamala's doing great. She's ahead in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Hard to say how many points. Could be 2, could be 5. It depends. But it doesn't really matter what that number exactly is, because the trend is truly what counts. All the top experts have said this all along, and that trend is continuing in Kamala's direction in every single set of polls that you can find And again, it all boils down to Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and that's it. It's those three. Obviously, you got to add in Nebraska too, but Nebraska too is going to be Kamala, so that's not an issue. So if she's got Nebraska too, and she's got Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, that's it. That's 270. End of discussion. Now we know that she may have more than that. She may have Georgia, maybe. She might have Nevada. She might have North Carolina. Possibly Arizona. I mean, there are a lot of states here, battleground states, that Donald could lose. And, I want to refer again to Eugene Robinson, who really, I think, has done the pollsters or the poll watching people a real service by suggesting that the polls may be, in fact, understating some votes, but that in this case, they may be understating Kamala's votes. Because there are plenty of people these days who will admit to Donald Trump. In fact, a dangerous number of people are willing to admit to Donald Trump, surprisingly and sadly, because I don't think any of us really want to see bad things happen to the United States. But on the other hand, the reactions of some of these people are just so horrible that it's hard not to think that there will be some seriously bad results. Let me give you an example. On the 60-minute program last night, there is a story that they ran because Donald refused. Donald quit. He backed out. He walked away. Kamala did her show. She talked very frankly, assertively, professionally. She answered many of the criticisms against her. And let me say this about the criticisms. The biggest one is this idea that Kamala changes her positions daily, weekly, monthly. Every time you turn around, she's got a new position. She's not sure of who she is or what she's doing, and she's just taking positions in order to pander to anybody. That's the criticism. Well, I think a lot of people can see that's not true. But here's the thing. Kamala spoke to it beautifully last night. She was asked, point blank, why are you changing your positions all the time? Do you realize what this is doing to the perception of you among people who could be voters? And her answer was very smart and very nicely described. She said, I've traveled around the country and I've learned a lot about what people think across the United States in the last couple of years. And in finding out what people think, I have adjusted some of my positions in order to deal with reality, realistic potential. So in other words, as any good, smart political person would do, she has tried to make judgments having to do with the possibilities for consensus. And, there's some things that you can't develop consensus on because it's beyond the values that you want to show. There may be some things, for me, it would be guns. I mean, I would say everybody's got to have their gun taken, but Kamala's not in that position, and she wants to be president of the United States and not just somebody with a mouth. And so she's trying to show that guns are okay. They should be safe. They should be protected, locked up, treated with care. People that use guns should have the proper training. But at the same time, she does say that having guns, that's acceptable. And so, again, she's trying to be realistic. She's against assault weapons, but she's not against handguns. She says she's got a Glock, and believe me, I have almost no idea what a Glock is, except for to say that I've watched enough television shows to know that people have Glocks. They're not 45s. She's used it, she says. She's practiced with it. She says pretty good. And I don't think it's pandering. I think it's a matter of trying to be respectful to people who have guns and who are not trying to hurt anybody, and at the same time be defensive from the kinds of people who could be very harmful. So all of that is part of the answer that she gave last night when asked, why are you changing all your positions? Medicare for All could be the greatest program that you would ever come across in this country. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of voting in support of Medicare for All at this point. Why? Probably just out of fear. I think Donald and some others have ginned up enough fear against those kinds of things that they just wouldn't be possible today. And so somebody like Kamala is trying to do the right thing and say, look, let's strengthen Obamacare and not worry about achieving a result in the insurance world that's impossible. So that's smart. And that's what she described last night on 60 Minutes. And I think that was probably the best argument that she made is this idea that she's made some changes in order to achieve consensus because she wants to be the kind of president that can get some things done. Not maybe everything that she would like done, but get some things done. And get some things done with the help and work together with other groups that, maybe she doesn't support or maybe she's not friendly to. But groups who she could certainly work with in a way that would maybe even entice their supporters to vote for her. Look, I think that's what she described perfectly. And I think that any rational person listening to it would have walked away and said, this lady's smart. She's not trying to hit home runs where you can't hit a home run. Maybe a single or a double, but not the kind of home runs that you would love to hit, but which, if you can't get around on a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, it's not going to work. And if the people in this country are just not there for some of these proposals, it won't work. Now, one proposal that will work, and I think that she's come out, very strong for it, and that's this credit for childcare. And I wouldn't be surprised if she comes up with some other ideas as well in order to mitigate the damages that are caused by people having to pay for childcare at rates that are just unsustainable without enormous incomes. You just can't do it. If you've got 3 kids that are basically babies and, not in kindergarten yet, and you got to find somewhere to put them, I mean, that could cost you $5,000 a month. And, there's some people who make $5,000 a month. That's $60,000 a year. So if you make $5,000 a month, You cannot be paying $5,000 a month for childcare. Just won't work. So there's no question that the Biden administration and Kamala have determined that this country needs to do something to help its people who have children that need to be taken care of so that the families can go to work. It just makes all the sense in the world. And it's something that probably has 75 or 80% support among the public. So Kamala is going to use something like that for sure as a basis for saying, vote for me because I'm going to take care of you. We're going to help you. Now, the question that came through 60 Minutes was, how are you going to pay for these things? Well, the answer is pretty simple, but I understand why she wouldn't say it. The answer is that the United States can borrow any amount of money anytime it wants. So there's just no issue having to do with the United States not being able to come up with money. Can we progress in an expanding economy, one that gets even better and avoids a recession? It's going to be tough. It would be tough for anybody. And it's going to be tough for Biden, for Harris if she wins in the next month. I mean, it's going to be hard for anybody to get through this without a recession. If Donald were the president of the United States, it would be the same answer. A recession would be a dangerous possibility. I say dangerous not because it would be a horrible thing for there to be a downturn in the economy. It's probably going to come sooner rather than later. But here's the problem. If you think that the economy is going to turn down and you think that you can guarantee that it won't get out of control and end up going much further than anybody would have expected otherwise, you're dreaming, because there's just no way to guarantee that. Once things go down, they might go down a little, they might go down a lot. It depends on how things are handled by the Federal Reserve. It depends on how things are handled on a fiscal policy level by the federal government. There's too much that is unknowable at this point. But we know this. Kamala's a smart lady. She will listen to her very smart advisors, and they will work to try to reduce the potential damage that could come from any kind of economic event. This country is leveraged in a lot of ways that is not good. And I'm not talking about the federal money. I'm talking about the private money. People buying all kinds of things at many crazy interest rates, which are damaging to individual households, damaging to overall economic growth, damaging to the potential for reducing interest rates in the long run, because we really need those rates to come down in the long run, not just the short run. We had low rates. We could have done things with those low rates that would have helped this country enormously, but we didn't do it. We didn't do it under Donald Trump. We didn't do it under Joe Biden. As far as I'm concerned, it was certainly a missed opportunity for both of them, but especially for Joe Biden, because Donald you can't count on for anything. But Joe Biden could have done something, and I think that surely he should have done something. Okay. So all of that having been said, is a long, circuitous route to get to the second part of the 60 Minutes program last night. And I'm going to go there in a minute. But first, let's talk about dinner. Really. I'm still, down towards the east side of our city, but I can tell you that it wouldn't take long to fly down that highway and get myself to Wenty's at 18,000 Chesterfield Airport Road. I mean, it's nice if you're over at that studio that we're normally in, and you can just walk out the door and you could be there in a snap. But, a half hour isn't that bad either from where I am. And I tell you this, all you're going to do is if you do it in a half an hour, you're just going to work up your appetite, and that's a good thing for Wenty's. Now, remember, at Wenty's, you're going to have wings, smoked meat. Certainly, I love hamburgers and cheeseburgers and patty melts with lots of onions on those patty melts. I really love them. However, you've got other things. You've got pizza. You've got salad. Really, I mean, it's not just a couple of pieces of lettuce. It's really good salads. And then, the iced tea is great, and they got excellent pizza. And when I say the iced tea is great, I've never had better iced tea. That's the truth. And that's Wenty's. I mean, lots of great food, but can't leave out those baby back ribs and those onion rings, because for me, that's a meal. Okay, so that's Wenty's, and it's at 18,000 Chesterfield Airport Road. And all you have to do, if you want more Wenty's, but you don't want to keep just dumping all your business at 18,000 Chesterfield Airport Road, so you just drive down the highway to Defiance. And then you're at 2999 South Highway 94 in Defiance. It's the same great food. It's just Wenty's Roadhouse, and it's in Defiance, and it's great. And when it's all said and done, you're not going to be hungry. I promise you that. That's Wenty's. Now, if you're looking for jewelry, I can tell you I'm a lot closer tonight to 4506 Hampton than I would be if I were out at the studio. And 4506 Hampton is Jewels on Hampton, and they buy and sell coins and jewelry. They design jewelry. They've got, I'm telling you, they got stacks and piles and cases filled with jewelry over at 4506 Hampton. You will love it. If you're interested in jewelry, you could just go through there, and it's like going to the museum, and you'll just see tons of great things. It might give you ideas for design. It might give you ideas for what you want to buy right now. All kinds of possibilities, but the best part of it is you're doing business with Al, and his son AJ is there, and I'm telling you, people love Al. Al's just a good guy. When it comes to jewelry, he's smart, and when it comes to money, he's fair. And when it comes to personality, he's just a good man. Anyway, that's Jewels on Hampton, 4506 Hampton. And if you've got a watch that needs to be fixed, they'll take care of that too, I promise. Now, the next is your suits. Your suits, your shirts, your shoes, your overcoats, even some hats, everything. But nothing is as great as the ties, at least from the value side of it all. Sure, they got great suits. They've got great overcoats at the St. Louis Suit Company. But I can tell you right now that $5 ties, they're silk with just terrific designs. And you can see the tie that I'm wearing right now, and it is a really nice tie. You just go to Forsyth and Central, and I promise, straight up the stairs, and you find yourself at the St. Louis Suit Company, which has been there for 30 years. They just do a great job. Everybody loves their suits. They love the ties. They love the prices on everything. And Jay and Nick they run a great business. For 30 years, they've been there at Forsyth and Central. So they know what they're doing, and they are the St. Louis Suit Company. But don't forget, too, if you're getting married, they'll take care of your wedding attire as well. And when it comes to wedding attire, everybody knows how professional they are at the St. Louis Suit Company. So definitely check them out. And finally, when you're ready for Italian food, and by the way, you can see my tie right now. It's really, these are nice ties. There's no joke. Okay, so that's what Joe Biden would say for sure. But listen, Telena's, great Italian food. And they are right at 141 and Olive. That's where you'll see the Deerbergs and a big shopping center there. And you just go through there. You'll find Telena's easily. They've been there for 40 years. Very successful, very, very good food. Mehdi just runs a great business, a great restaurant, and he really knows Italian food. He does. Now, it's true. He knows all kinds of other food too. He really knows food. And every once in a while, he'll fool people and he'll throw things on that menu for fun. But it's an Italian restaurant. And it's a very good Italian restaurant. Just so, and you don't have to ask for Mehdi, but you can. You definitely can. Mehdi's another one of these, small businessmen, nice person. That we got a lot of them here. We got some good people working together. 4 nice companies that are working right now with Showdown, and I promise you, you'll love Telena's. And don't forget, this is Tuesday, so different things you might want to eat during the week. But when you get to Friday, it's all spaghetti and meatballs, and I promise you, it's the best spaghetti and meatballs that you'll ever find in St. Louis or maybe anywhere. It's just good. It's really funny. I got some spaghetti and meatballs over the weekend, and which I had mentioned before, and Susan, that's Mehdi's wife, and she said, how about some cheese on it? So anyway, it ended up with cheese. You're not going to argue with Susan. And the cheese was great. There's no question. It was fabulous. I won't say it was without calories. It had calories. You trust me on that. But it was good. And that's Telena's in Creve Coeur. Okay, so let's talk about Maricopa County in Arizona and the second part of 60 Minutes last night, which was sad. It was sad. I was very unhappy about it. I don't know if Michael's watching tonight, but Michael's in Arizona, and I know he's doing some work at the polls down there as well. And they had a Republican guy who is in charge of the polls in Arizona. It's an elected position, and he did a lot of work in counting the votes in 2020. And after they counted the votes the first time, he made sure that they counted the votes again. And he went through this process very methodically and just made sure that whatever was counted properly, correctly. And after all was said and done, this guy said the vote was fair. It may not have been the result that we all wanted, but it was fair, and Joe Biden won. And from that moment on, his life was hell, because the MAGA people weren't interested in trying to decide or decipher, whose intentions were good, bad, or on the other side of anything. All they wanted to know was, are you supporting Donald's victory, which of course was not one, or are you going to come up with something else which they weren't interested in, which would be fine if it was just a vote. It wasn't just a vote. It was threats. It was phone calls saying, we know where your children are. We know where they go to school. We can get them anytime we want them. We can do anything to your family that you can even think of, or even beyond your imagination. Truly, they scared the hell out of this family. I say they, the MAGA people. There was a woman that jumped into this race against this Republican who really did the work. I mean, he wanted to make sure that this was fair, because he was, wanted to make sure if Donald won. Because if Donald won, then that would be an opportunity to say, look, we made a mistake. Donald won the election. But he didn't. It's that simple. It's not the only place in the country where this is true, but Donald lost. Period. At the moment, the polls in Arizona are slightly tilted back in Donald's direction, but there's momentum out here that's huge, and this election may very well go to Kamala, even in Arizona. But this new lady in Arizona is perfectly prepared to do whatever is necessary to put Donald in office based on the vote in Maricopa, in all of Arizona, if that's necessary. If Donald wins, which he won't, but if he wins, they'll gladly take the win. They'll say they knew all along, and that's it. But if he loses, which is highly probable, those 90 different groups of people that have been sent all over the country in order to disrupt this election, they are going to go to work, and they're going to do some damage to this country over, I would say, probably 3 to 4 weeks after November 5th. So keep this in mind. On November 5th, there's going to be an election. They'll count the votes, and if Donald loses, it's very likely that by December 5th, a month later, people are still going to be banging each other's heads. Now, that's the nice description of what might happen, because you know that there are MAGA people out here right now who are promising that there's going to be a civil war. They're threatening it, and I'll say this. I know there won't be, and I know that if they try, if they tried it, they'd be crushed so fast. There's no way that the United States government is going to allow any of this mess to continue the way Donald promoted it in 2020. It's just, that's not going to happen. Joe Biden wouldn't allow this under any circumstances. He is going to be very prepared to be sure that whatever the result of this election is, that it is enforced very safely, if possible, and certainly with all the fidelity that is required in an American election. What you would expect in an American election, that people are going to follow the rules, that they're going to count the votes, and that eventually everybody's going to say, okay, here's the winner, here's the loser, I concede, I'm the winner, end of story. That is what we would normally get from 1789 to 2024. That's what you would normally get. Instead, somehow Earth 1, Earth 2 has just turned into a nightmare. And I say a nightmare, I guess it depends on who you are, whether this is a nightmare or whether it is some kind of a desperately dangerous reality. But for this guy on 60 Minutes last night, I can tell you this. He's miserable, and his family is frightened. And it's all because of Donald, to no purpose except for the idea that Donald thinks that he's entitled to everything and everybody else is entitled to nothing. I mean, that's what the man believes. And you would think that after all the failures that he's had in his life, with all the way that everything he's touched has died, you would think that Donald would very simply wake up one day in 2024 at 78 years old. He'd look around and say, I've suffered enough. Because, that's all he talks about is how he has suffered, how he is the victim. Yeah, he's the victim. With all his billions that don't even exist, he's the victim. But he did come up with one thing. We know that. He came up with DJT, currently trading at $21 a share, up from $12 in a matter of a few days, because Elon Musk might be buying the company. Maybe. Look, it's got to give Donald at least some kind of a night's sleep, because he was on his way to zero. And since he's got zero on this side, another zero on that side would not be good for him. Does Musk really want to turn his money over to Trump? Maybe he does. Maybe he's tricked himself into believing something. I don't know what he's doing. But I know that it's a potential move on the part of Musk, on the part of Trump. They could join forces, turn $2, $3, $4, $5 billion over to Donald, and they think that they would control the world. Unfortunately for them, I think they're going to find out that none of this is as simple as they think. The people in this country are not happy, and they don't want to hear about they ate the dogs. No, they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear the lies about how FEMA refuses to provide any support for North Carolina, and how FEMA is a complete disaster, and they'll never have anything for the people in Florida, and everybody's going to suffer. And Ron DeSantis has thrown himself into this in some kind of a crazy way, speaking against Kamala for whatever reason I can't even imagine. I know, I guess the theory is that you can make her look stupid, but not so easy, because she is not stupid. She's a very smart lady. She knows what to do, and she's going to do it. There's some big arguments coming over the border, and so that's more of what we're going to hear coming up here, I'd say, between now and the election day. I mean, I don't think there's a doubt that Donald is doing everything he can to try to make it look like immigrants are the biggest problem in our country. And in fact, they're not. It's the opposite. We know that immigrant crime is practically zero, and American-born crime is not through the roof, but it's a whole lot higher than immigrant crime, because, in fact, crime in the United States is, you ready for this? At a 50-year low. You may believe otherwise. Somebody may have told you this. I don't know. I can't say. It's just too stupid. But 77% of the people in the United States said we're at an all-time high for crime. In the Gallup poll, we're at an all-time low. That somebody else is going to have to figure out. I'm not smart enough to understand that kind of foolish psychology. I do understand this, though. I understand that Wendy's and Jules on Hampton and the St. Louis Suit Company and Telena's make all of this possible. And from here in the city, on campus. I'm Mark Kaysen. This is Showdown.